Hello everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Access Blockbusters Pod. Welcome to episode number 89 of the Access Blockbusters Pod. Thank you so much for joining us, guys. We have a lot to talk about here as we enter August, as we enter, not the dog days of summer, but you know that the movie theaters are slowing down a little bit with their releases. Not as many big movies to talk about. May, June and July, I should say. Wow, what a time, Lilo and Stitch, Mission Impossible, Thunderbolts, How to Train Your Dragon, F1, Elio, Fantastic Four, Jurassic World, Superman, all of these great movies to talk about. So it's been fun, but we're going to slow down a little bit. And we have some TV shows, obviously Peacemaker coming out. We'll talk about the new trailer here on the podcast. But guys, thank you so much for joining us. As always, if you haven't subscribed to the Access Blockbusters YouTube channel, we are on the road to 2,000 subscribers, and we are trying to reach it by the end of 2025. So thank you so much. By December 31st, 2025, we are trying to hit 2,000 subscribers. So please make sure to subscribe. Give this video a like if you could. That would mean so much to me. Thank you for watching and listening on the YouTube channel. And if you're interested in listening to the audio-only platform, then we have Apple Podcasts, Overcast, and Spotify as well. And for those of you guys who don't know, the full podcast episode releases first on the audio-only platform Saturday mornings U.S. time. So make sure to check out the full podcast there if you want to get the entirety of the audio before anyone else does. Guys, that will do it for today's intro. Let's get into the topics. Alrighty, guys, after a little bit of a pause, the MCU, because it is now the MCU, Defenders Saga rewatch continues. And it's actually not even really a rewatch anymore. It is more like a first-time watching, because today we're going to be talking about perhaps the most controversial / disliked series in the Defenders canon. That is Iron Fist, and specifically Iron Fist Season 1. So for those of you who are unfamiliar, we like to, what I've been doing thus far, we have our DCE rewatch going as well, and I just really haven't had a chance to release those episodes. I have many in the backlog, but really those episodes are being saved for a rainy day, and I have a lot of those in the backlog. But in the meantime, as we are also doing the DCE rewatch, we are also doing a Defenders Saga rewatch / watching for the first time, because for background context, I have seen Daredevil seasons 1 through 3 and the Defenders prior to this year, but I had not seen any of the other shows because I tried Jessica Jones a little bit, and I wasn't super thrilled with what I saw, and so I just decided to watch Daredevil and focus on his character. And now, as I was gearing up for Daredevil Born Again season 1, I decided let's rewatch Daredevil season 1. And after I finished it, I thought, well, maybe we'll try Jessica Jones again, and I got through that. And at the time, Jessica Jones was confirmed around the time I was finishing up Jessica Jones season 1, I think, to be appearing in Daredevil Born Again season 2. So it only reaffirmed my decision to then go through the entire Defender saga, which has been honestly pretty fun thus far. Not many complaints, although none of the shows, I think, reached the peak of Daredevil seasons 1 and 2 thus far, but still, it's been fun. It's been fun. And so we're going to, and again, with teases from Mike Coulter, and even we talked about Elektra last week, and maybe she'll appear, and Punisher's appearing in Spider-Man Brand New Day, so I haven't seen Punisher, the show. Obviously I saw him in Daredevil season 2, so I'm excited to be doing this. And so we continue on in chronological order, in release order, rather, although I think most of the shows are in chronological order, with Iron Fist, season 1. Now, Iron Fist, I know, is relatively disliked. I knew that going in. I knew that out of all four characters, maybe Mike Coulter shows up in Daredevil Born Again season 1 or season 2, but it just seems unlikely that Iron Fist is going to appear because Finn Jones's portrayal of the character and the season as a whole, the seasons rather, because there is a second season coming up, are relatively disliked. And I knew that. But I also am somebody who goes in to all of these projects with as open of a mind as possible. I am totally fine if I am the one person who loves Iron Fist and no one else does. Totally fine with it. I want to enjoy as much of these, projects as I possibly can, because it's for my own enjoyment that I'm doing this, honestly. And if I hate all of them, then that really sucks for me, right? And then of course we're here to talk about them, but I'm not just doing content for the sake of content. I want to like all of these projects. And thus far, obviously I love Daredevil season 1, and I really like Daredevil season 2. I had some problems with Jessica Jones. It wasn't my favorite, but I didn't hate it or anything like that. And I liked Luke Cage season 1, though I also think that show was a tale of two seasons. So we head into Iron Fist. And here's the interesting thing about Iron Fist season 1. Again, first time I've ever seen the entire season, from beginning to end. I actually, as I was watching the first maybe 4, 5, 6 out of the 13 episodes, was saying to myself, am I gonna be that one person who loves Iron Fist? I say love. I say I said love. I should have said liked. I was saying to myself, am I going to be the one person who says, oh, I actually really like Iron Fist? Because truthfully speaking, and I don't know what your guys' consensus on this is. All I know is that most people don't like it. I don't know what parts they don't like or anything like that. But as I was watching the first half of the season, I was thinking, this is interesting. This is pretty compelling. I quite liked the beginning parts of the season that dealt with the sort of corporate espionage and Danny Rand taking his name back. And look, I know and I acknowledge that Finn Jones's performance as Iron Fist is a little lackluster. I get that. And we'll talk about some of the other performances later, mainly Bakuto. Oh my goodness, Bakuto. But, you know, I while his performance was lackluster, it never took me entirely out of the show per se. And I thought that the idea of trying to reclaim his name, and then there was some intriguing backstory with Kun Lun and the Iron Fist. I thought the setup actually was interesting with the Meachums, with Joy, with Ward, with Harold obviously coming back to life, and also introducing Colleen Wing. I was pretty on board with the first few episodes. Also introducing Madame Gao as the main villain, we thought, entering the first half of the season. I liked it. I was enjoying the season. And not to say that the second half, I just hated every second of it, but the second half really lost me. And so as I was, the more I watched the show after the halfway point, I was really, every single episode did something that I was like, what is going on? Why is this happening? What happened to this show? And really, to me, the failures of Iron Fist, in my opinion, come down to the writing. Because I don't know if Finn Jones is a Hayden Christensen type situation where if he had just been given a better script, he would have been totally fine. I don't know if it's on his acting ability. Because to be fair to him, the stuff that he was being given to say is just, it is Star Wars prequel level stuff. I get that Danny Rand is a fish out of water. And I get that he's not saying, you know, he's saying, I am the Iron Fist and I'm the protector of Kun Lun and I am the living weapon. And I get that he's not supposed to be, you know, a normal everyday New Yorker. I get, or, well, I mean, he was, but then, you know, he comes back from the monastery. I get that. But some of the stuff that he has to say and some of the delivery is just, it's some of it is a little bit unbearable. And speaking of unbearable, right, we'll talk about performances now. While I really liked some of the performances here, I quite like Jessica Henwick as Colleen Wing, although she, especially towards the second half, also had some unbearable dialogue. But I actually quite liked her as a character. I found that Joy and Ward were, actually Joy mostly. I thought Joy was pretty good. Ward was a little bit unbearable towards the end as well. Again, I don't know if it's the actor's fault. I don't know his name. Apologies off the top of my head. But I don't know if it was the performance or the writing. It could be both, but the writing, the stuff that he was being given to say was not great. Harold, I thought the actor who played Harold was pretty good. He did a good job. But again, just kind of given that maniacal villain turn later on. And Claire Temple. I have to say, I love Rosario Dawson, and I think she's great. And every single time she appears in the Defender saga, I'm going, okay, yeah, sure, makes sense. And every time she shows up in the next project, I'm progressively growing more and more wary of the connections of why she needs to be in the show. So Daredevil, I'm like, okay, he meets somebody, you know, he needs somebody to heal him. That makes sense. Jessica Jones, at the very end, I'm like, okay, yeah, makes sense that she ends up at a hospital and she has to save Luke Cage. Neat little connection there. Luke Cage, I'm like, okay, she returns to her home and she just happens to get caught up in the Luke Cage stuff. Okay. And then Iron Fist was the straw that broke the camel's back. I'm like, why are you in this story? What purpose does this character serve to this story other than just to say, I'm here? I love Claire Temple. I love Rosario Dawson. I don't understand. Why are you in this show? It just feels tenuous. A lot of the writing here feels tenuous. And getting back to the performances, but also the writing, oh my goodness, all the stuff with Davos and all the stuff with Bakuto towards the second half was so bad and so over the top, dramatic, melodramatic, and none of it was developed either. Bakuto came out of nowhere and was like, hello, I am Bakuto. I am here to destroy you. Isn't that nice, Danny Rand? And I'm like, oh my goodness, what are we doing here? Because honestly, I find Madame Gao to be a pretty compelling villain. Let's stop there. Let's have Madame Gao really be the villain of the series. Instead, Madame Gao is relegated to prison for the second half of the season, and then she just kind of shows up at the end. And the stuff with Davos, again, I don't know if it's the actor's fault. I don't want to blame anybody, right? It's not, you know, I'm not saying anyone was out here to make the worst product. I'm not saying anything like that. But, I mean, the kinds of things that they're forced to say, Bakuto and Davos and Danny, and it's like, oh my goodness, stop saying, oh, we had a fight and we had a falling out. Show don't tell. is a phrase that I think gets overused, honestly. Sometimes you do need to talk about things. Honestly, that's my opinion. I think that in writing, sometimes you do need to tell. But you can't just only tell. It's a mix of show and tell, not show, don't tell. But it's not just tell. I mean, these characters are talking all about their problems and their traumas, and Davos and Danny are going through all these things. And by the time we get to the end of the show, I'm like, what in the world happened? Because again, it's disappointing to me because the first half of this show, the first half of season 1 of Iron Fist, I was on board with. I really thought it was interesting. I also know that there are some other controversies around the casting of some of the characters and whatnot. I don't, frankly, I wasn't watching the show when it came out, and I don't know what the controversies exactly were. I did a little bit of reading on the Wikipedia page and whatnot. So all that aside, we're not here to talk about any of that kind of stuff. Just purely based on what we see in the show. I thought the show had promise at the beginning. I was like, this is an interesting corporate espionage. The idea of corporations and cold-hearted capitalism versus what's right. And I think that stuff is interesting. And the second half of the show decides to just tailspin into all these different directions, and none of them are particularly interesting. I guess Harold coming back to life was kind of interesting. And I guess he's the main villain of the show, I guess, but I don't know. And again, the writing and the dialogue was really what did it in for me. I don't inherently hate Finn Jones as Iron Fist. I think that he could have been given a lot better stuff to do. I also think that maybe Iron Fist inherently is not an interesting character. And I know that that's silly to say because you can make any concept interesting. I truly believe that. We had a Lego movie and it was awesome. No pun intended with that movie. We've had a Barbie movie and that movie was awesome, right? You can have any concept inherently and make it good. I truly believe that. The way that they executed on the Iron Fist though, the glowing hand, and the chi, always talking about the chi. Like, so I remember in the Defenders that they make fun of him for that, and I think that that's maybe being a little bit more self-aware. I don't know, maybe season 2 of Iron Fist is better because they're a little more self-aware and the writing is different and better. Maybe, I hope so, because all the stuff about you focus my chi and I'm the Iron Fist, and I was just like, oh my goodness. So again, I know I'm probably joining a chorus of people who say this is thus far, right? We have Daredevil, we have Jessica Jones, Daredevil Season 2, Luke Cage, and now Iron Fist. This is my least favorite out of the 5. That being said, I don't think the entire thing is unsalvageable. I liked a decent part of it. I also, it wasn't so much of a train wreck that I was like, I need to turn this thing off. It is boring me to death, or it is making me want to cry and cringe. Nothing like that. I'm just disappointed because really the setup for the show was quite promising. I also think it probably suffers a little bit, although I know that the Hand is the typical villain for Iron Fist. It also, I know this now in hindsight because of Defenders, was probably doing a little bit too much to set up what was going on in Defenders, although I think Daredevil Season 2 was suffering from that same problem, and I think Daredevil Season 2 was much more successful in terms of its execution of the Hand and whatnot. I'm really disappointed because I wanted to like Finn Jones as Iron Fist, and I think he's fine. I think he could have been given a lot better material to do. And I'm interested to see now his interactions with Luke Cage, because I know that that's coming up in future seasons of the Defender saga. But, it's just hard, because by the end of the season, they're going in so many different directions. Claire goes to China with them for some reason, because I got sick of her being like, it's my destiny, it's my fate to meet these people. It doesn't have to, like, you could just be somebody who has connections in New York City, for all we know. Because now you're randomly showing up in Iron Fist for no reason. Again, I thought the twist with I like Colleen, and I thought the twist with her being a part of the Hand was interesting. I think the part about the Hand being split up into different factions with Gao and Bakuto kind of warring over what to do could have been explored way more, but was an interesting concept. I think that Davos and Danny, that's somewhat interesting. Again, that's being set up. I thought the twist or not the twist, but the character turn for Joy at the end of the season, completely turning on Danny, was out of nowhere. Nothing in this series really set that up emotionally, at least. In terms of story beats, it might have been set up. But again, I just think that this show, it had so many things it wanted to do. It was burdened by a lack of sharp writing. And perhaps the performances as well. Even the fight sequences were not as interesting. By the time we got to the end, I was like, okay, I am ready to see him in a team. I'm ready to see him in the Defenders. I am ready for this chapter to close. So, again, I know I probably am not a singular opinion in saying I did not particularly enjoy Iron Fist Season 1. I wanted to. I was for a certain amount of time, for a certain number of episodes, but now we are ready to flip the page. Because, guys, the next The next series up is The Defenders, and this is going to be an official rewatch. I have seen The Defenders, but I'm very excited now because look, we've kind of trudged through Iron Fist, and I didn't love all of Jessica Jones, and I thought Luke Cage was left me a little wanting, but I'm excited because I have their full contexts now. I know the supporting characters, Misty Knight and Colleen Wing, Trish Walker, I think, from Jessica Jones. I know all the supporting characters. Hogarth showing up in Iron Fist actually meant something to me now. So I'm excited to see all these characters interact, because that's at least something where, look, even if the individual seasons all didn't work for me, I think that their interactions together are going to be pretty fun. And I'm very interested to see how the Defenders shapes up upon rewatch with this new context. So guys, those are my thoughts on Iron Fist Season 1. The Defender Saga, rewatch, first watch, I don't know what you want to call it, continues, and I'm very excited for what comes next. Punisher also is coming up as well. So let me know what you thought about Iron Fist Season 1 in the comments down below. Alrighty, guys, I have a proclamation to make. Are you ready for this? Are you ready for this? Earth-shattering, I know. Superhero fatigue is not real. At least not right now. So, Fantastic Four First Steps has come out, and I've done my review. I've done my non-spoiler and spoiler review for Fantastic Four First Steps. Needless to say, you can go check those out. I love the film. I adore this movie. I think it's one of the best superhero movies made in such a long time. It's such a breath of fresh air for Marvel, and it's amazing. I also did my review. We'll talk about this film a little bit in context of Fantastic Four, but I did my review of Superman, and I liked it. I thought it was very solid. I didn't love it. I wasn't over the moon with it, but I really liked it. I did. I thought it was very, very solid. I've always said, because people, well-meaning people, right? Some of my friends have said, oh, I'm a big Marvel fan, and I personally don't care about DC, and why would I care about DC? And that's fine. It's their opinion to say so. I have other friends who are like, oh, I'm generally more a Batman fan. I don't really care about the Iron Man. I think it's silly. It's fine. It's their opinion. It's totally their right to think that. But usually, the sentiment, either explicit or implicit, that comes with that is that I want one to succeed over the other. To which I respond, and we have a really, really good case study now of July 2025. They can both succeed, and if they both succeed, that's good for all of us. Because Fantastic Four First Steps has come out. We're going to talk about some of the first weekend box office numbers like we did with Superman. And what we're going to find is that both Fantastic Four and Superman are thriving. And that is a great thing for not just us, not just for the superhero movie industry, for the movie industry as a whole. So I'm looking at this article here from Deadline. Again, Deadline being one of the more, or not Deadline, Variety rather. Variety and Deadline and The Hollywood Reporter being some of the more reputable sources out there for movie news and entertainment news. And this article from Variety talks about the Fantastic Four First Steps and its initial box office run. So let's go through some of the things that it talks about. Fantastic Four First Steps. In its opening weekend has made $118 million, which is not well ahead, but a decent amount ahead of the expectations between $100 and $110 million. So it beat out some of its projections. Now again, like we did with Superman, we have to give some context here. This is not nearly the biggest opening weekend for a Marvel movie or a superhero movie. Again, we have films like, Batman, Batman v Superman, or a lot of the Batman films, the Avengers films, the Captain America films, even I think Man of Steel and Superman were a little bit bigger. So no, Fantastic Four First Steps opening weekend is not nearly as big as any of the hugest box office films of the past 10 years or so. It's not even close to Black Panther. It's not even close to Endgame. It's not like that. That being said, $118 million for a franchise, for a film in I'm going to say quote unquote franchise, because it's not really tied to the other Fantastic Four movies, really in name only. But it's still important to point out that those Fantastic Four films, the Fantastic Four 2005, Fantastic Four Rise of the Silver Surfer, I believe in 2008, and then Fan Four Stick or Fantastic Four the Reboot in 2015, those films were really poorly received. So I think it's fair to say that people might have had some skepticism going into this Fantastic Four. It's not like you're making another Captain America film, which, Captain America Brave New World came out, and people were like, oh, what is this? It's not with Chris Evans. I don't know what it is. I haven't seen Falcon and the Winter Soldier. Not going to watch it. That movie didn't make a lot of money at the box office. So it may not be the be-all, end-all factor as to why Fantastic Four didn't have a $200 million opening. There are a lot of factors going into it. Marvel is not at its peak, right? It's not at the height of its powers. But I still think that, while there are some mitigating factors about why Fantastic Four First Steps didn't crush at the box office, on top of the fact that it's not, I'm not going to say it's not mainstream, but the trailers made it to look very different from your average superhero film. It still did very well at the box office. Now, Fantastic Four First Steps, right? It's coming along against with Superman, and Superman is in its third weekend at the box office, and Superman has been still making steadily making lots of money as well at the box office. In fact, Superman just recently crossed the $500 million mark. It looks like it's going to settle in at between $650 and $700 million, which, if you recall my latest projections that we did at the beginning of the summer, that's about where I put Superman to land at the box office. And I think that is an incredible result if that is where Superman ends up landing. Fantastic Four First Steps is actually kind of on an eerily similar trajectory in terms of domestic box office at the very least. And I wouldn't be surprised if, as Superman, as all films do, begins to fade a little bit as we head into August, Fantastic Four First Steps doesn't pick up that baton. We'll see with the second weekend box office numbers. But I wouldn't be surprised if Fantastic Four First Steps doesn't pick up that baton and carry it over and have that same momentum. And I wouldn't be surprised, like I said, if it doesn't follow a very similar trajectory to Superman. It would not stun me to see both films land at about a similar dollar figure at the end of their worldwide box office runs, at about maybe $600 to $700 million, which for both films is very successful. This Variety article also gives some context here that recent Marvel movies like Captain America Brave New World and Ant-Man and the Wasp both also made around $100 million opening weekend, but both films struggled to make much more than $400 million worldwide. So it's important to point out that just because Fantastic Four had an opening weekend of $118 million does not mean that this movie is going to make a lot of money, because, again, while Captain America and Ant-Man did well relatively or objectively speaking for box office, compared to other Marvel movies, they really underperformed. That being said, compared to Ant-Man and compared to Captain America Brave New World, Fantastic Four First Steps has two things going for it that those two films didn't. Number one, those two films were two of the worst reviewed films in Marvel history. And I say Marvel, MCU history, right? Next to Eternals, those two films are two of the worst reviewed films, at least according to Rotten Tomatoes, but other metrics like CinemaScore and Metacritic and whatnot, those two films were not well received. Fantastic Four First Steps is receiving generally critical acclaim. So that it has that going for it. And that's going to be really big, honestly, as it heads into its second, third, and fourth weekends, about how other people are recommending Fantastic Four. I'm telling people around me, my family and friends, go see Fantastic Four. I know that there are Marvel movies all the time. Go see Fantastic Four. This one is worth seeing. The other, though, I think arguably bigger contributing factor as to why I think Fantastic Four First Steps can really shine and go to that $700 million mark is because it came out in July. And there is nothing. Oh, guys, when I say there is almost nothing coming out in August, and that's not entirely true. It's not like there's absolutely nothing coming out in August, but really, the next big blockbuster movie that we're going to really cover on this YouTube channel is in October with Tron Ares. In between that, August and September are pretty much empty. I know that there are not odd films, odd meaning, little films here and there is what I meant to say, coming out in August and September. We have Running Man, I think, and if Running Man does well, then I'll go out and see it, but again, really the next big blockbuster movie to come out is Tron Ares, and then we got Wicked and Zootopia, so we got a lot of films heading into the winter season. But in terms of August and September, there's almost nothing. There is almost nothing. Fantastic Four First Steps has the runway, as summer ends, as kids head back to school, for everyone to go out and see it as much as they want to, because Fantastic Four is going to have that space, as is Superman. But I think Superman is going to fade a little bit more quickly because it's going to probably head into the twilight of its box office run, I would say mid-August, whereas I think Fantastic Four First Steps has all of August to see where it can go. So I think this again, Superman making, I think, $120-something million opening weekend, and Fantastic Four First Steps making $118 million shows us that it's not superhero fatigue, but rather, I think there are just a lot of mitigating factors. I think people just don't go to certain movies, superhero movies, for various reasons. Number one, right, is if the films don't do well, people aren't going to go. Captain America Brave New World as an example. And number two, because people might point to Thunderbolts and be like, well, Thunderbolts did really well critically. Why didn't people go to that? Fair point. I think that one is just a unique circumstance of, like what Kevin Feige had been saying recently, that they had just used a bunch of Disney Plus characters. And I think that film was not marketed super well, that movie, unfortunately, because I really like Thunderbolts, that movie didn't do that well at the box office, which is disappointing, but I think it is what it is. So I really think the opportunity is there, especially for Marvel, that once Spider-Man Brand New Day comes out, because the last movie that people would have seen in the theaters is Fantastic Four First Steps and Thunderbolts. That's great. Spider-Man, it's Spider-Man, right? Spider-Man has all the momentum. Spider-Man is coming out in July, prime time, and then you have Avengers Doomsday. I think Marvel can have a really strong 2026 at the box office. We'll see, but I think that it's things are looking up in terms of the movies, at least for the MCU. So guys, what do you make of these first weekend box office results for Fantastic Four First Steps? I take this to be very encouraging, not just for Fantastic Four, but also for Superman, also for DC, also for the superhero movie industry as a whole, and also for the movie industry as a whole. Let me know what you think about all of this in the comments down below. Alrighty guys, HBO Max has a really interesting lineup for 2025. We got a lot of shows coming up. Peacemaker Season 2, which we will be talking about later on in the podcast episode. But before Peacemaker, or actually after Peacemaker, but before we talk about Peacemaker Season 2, there's another HBO show that just released a trailer, and that is It, Welcome to Derry. We've done a couple segments now on the Access Blockbusters pod and the Access Blockbusters YouTube channel talking about this It franchise and this spinoff, It, Welcome to Derry. It is the Stephen King franchise, the novel in which that spawned out a movie, or actually a TV show back in the day with Tim Curry, but then now a series of movies, It Chapter 1 and It Chapter 2, directed by Andy Muschietti, following the adventures of a bunch of kids who grow up in the town of Derry, and they are terrorized by a clown named Pennywise. So it was, for me, as somebody who, again, I've said, I'm not a big fan of horror, generally speaking, but I like the It movies enough because it's not just horror for the sake of horror. It's suspense, and I think that the clown itself is intriguing. That the concept is intriguing enough that I'm willing to kind of get past the jump scares. But I actually quite liked the first film. Second film, not as much. But when they announced they were doing a spinoff, I actually was quite intrigued, and so I've been pretty interested to see what they're going to do with the second movie, or with the spin-off show rather. And we have our first, we have our second trailer really, but I think this is the first long trailer. And I have to say, I'm kind of two minds of this. Number one, I think that if you're going to make anything in this It world, in this It franchise, it is pretty much what you expect from it, right? It's about Derry, and the idea with Derry is that there are just strange things going on. I think it's every 27 years, where things just kind of go weird in Derry, and Pennywise reappears. And so this looks like one of those prequel era, before the events of the main It franchise. It looks like that's what's happening here, which is, look, I think it's of all things that could be going on, it's been... I mean, it makes sense, right? This looks like what would happen in the It world, in the It franchise. So, I mean, yeah, looking at that, I'm like, yeah, that seems reasonable. This looks like what you would expect from watching an It show or an It movie. On the other hand, I feel like when you're going to the well of prequels, and I mean, I don't know, prequels are pretty hit or miss, right? It depends on the concept. Andor is really good, but again, prequels are interesting because you know what's going to happen. And I suppose setting this well in the past where you're not following the same characters, it looks like we're following a completely different group of kids. And I don't know if there are going to be any connections at all to the characters from the It movies. It's produced by Andy Muschietti, so one might imagine. Obviously, Bill Skarsgård is returning to play Pennywise, which is exciting, because I did think he was really phenomenal in those movies. But I don't know. I mean, on the one hand, yes, this is what you expect from an It show. On the other hand, that's about it. I mean, you could make another show or another movie about a haunting where Pennywise haunts a couple kids. I'm curious to see, is this going to dive into anything else? Or is this just going to be not a carbon copy, but a repeat of the formula that made the It movie so successful? I don't know. Frankly, I personally would like to see something a little bit more than just, Pennywise haunts another group of kids 27 years before the events of, and again, it might not be 27, but, it's not just Pennywise does the same thing to a different group of kids. I'm hoping that this prequel is made to shed some light on different things that happen in the It films so that you can get some more context. I'm not saying we need an entire Pennywise origin story or anything like that, because I know in the book it's crazy. All the stuff that goes on with Pennywise in his backstory is crazy. So I'm not saying that we need all of that kind of stuff. I'm just saying that I'm curious to see whether or not this show dives any deeper into what it could be as a prequel, or if it's just, hey, here's another instance of Pennywise haunting people. You like the It movie, so you're gonna watch this It show, because I mean, if that's the case, sure, it'll be entertaining, I suppose, but even then, I might be a little bit more disappointed than not. So those are my thoughts on the second trailer. I'll be curious. The release date now is October, so we'll see when that comes out. But again, I mean, hoping for the best here, and we will see where we go from there. Guys, what do you think of this new trailer for It Welcome to Derry? Did you like it? Are you enjoying it? Or are you excited for the show? Or are you maybe a little bit nervous like me? Let me know in the comments down below. Alrighty guys, well, Spider-Man Brand New Day looks like it is heading full steam ahead into production, and we're learning more and more about this film as the days go on, which is very exciting. This is the next MCU movie up, and it is the final one coming to theaters before Avengers Doomsday, which looks like it's going to be just a crazy movie. All these things about finished script and not finished script, it looks like they're tinkering with the script. It looks like they are working on different scenes. They're also keeping it close to the vest. We're not here to talk about Doomsday, but just to quickly address that, because there are so many articles going on about Avengers Doomsday has no finished script and it's crazy and it's terrible. Guys, I think that if the MCU, had been in the same place that it was, like, for example, in Infinity War days, right? If the MCU had been in such a state at that point, and instead of riding the extreme high that was the Infinity Saga, I think people would have been saying the exact same thing. Infinity War doesn't have a script, and Infinity War, the people just weren't given scripts, and people weren't, I think that, yes, Avengers Doomsday is being tinkered with, and I'm sure the ending is being, slowly rewritten, or not slowly rewritten, but slowly, modified and whatnot. I don't think they're writing the script on the fly. Anyways, all that to say, the last film before Avengers Doomsday, though, is Spider-Man Brand New Day. And we're going to talk about Avengers Doomsday because it looks like we have some new set photos. And while I'm not going to show these set photos exactly because I don't want to get in trouble on the YouTube channel, it looks like, based on those set photos, the film is going to be taking place in December 2027. Now, people smarter than I, because I would like to think I'm in the upper echelon of Marvel fans. I don't know if I should take pride or if I should be ashamed of that, but I'd like to think that in terms of the MCU, I'm pretty well versed. But there are people smarter than me who have figured out the exact timeline of what is going on in the current day MCU, because there are a lot of dates being thrown around, and Thunderbolts post-credit scene 14 months later. So people have kind of hashed it out here, and I think it's interesting based on what we've learned from all of this. So signage has been spotted on the set of Spider-Man Brand New Day, which also Tom Holland has teased. He took a selfie, I think, in a dressing room, getting his makeup done, which I think is notable. He was like, "Hey, we're shooting something secret soon. Wonder what that could be." Obviously, could also be Doomsday. By the way, we don't know. Maybe Zendaya and Sadie Sink are going to film all their scenes first, and then Tom Holland's going to swing over from Doomsday to film that. Who knows? Who knows? Right? Who knows? But the signage for Spider-Man Brand New Day is apparently saying December 2027. Why is that significant? Well, that is significant because it seems like, from what people are speculating, conjecturing, and based on previous clues, that Captain America Brave New World took place during 2026 and 2027, which I have a whole lot of questions about that because of presidential election cycles, and when was Thaddeus Ross elected? Did the blip have anything to do with changing the election cycles? Anyways, that's such a nerdy and dumb conversation because it can be whatever it wants. In the MCU, they can have presidential elections every 2 years if they really wanted to, and we just have to deal with it. So all that aside, they're saying Captain America Brave New World takes place between 2026 and 2027. Thunderbolts takes place in 2027. Obviously, Fantastic Four takes place in an alternate Earth, so this timeline doesn't really matter for them, so that's all fine. But then, if Spider-Man Brand New Day takes place in December of 2027, we are going roughly chronologically because, right? That Thunderbolts post-credit scene, while it's not officially confirmed if that post-credit scene with the Fantastic Four ship is exactly, it is going to be shot for shot in Avengers Doomsday, it is taking place around the same time as Avengers Doomsday. And that post-credit scene explicitly said 14 months later. So Avengers Doomsday looks to be taking place around 2028 or 2029. Right? Based on all this timeline shenanigans, which means if this all is to be believed, Spider-Man Brand New Day is officially going to take place before Avengers Doomsday. One big caveat, because I remember this. Spider-Man No Way Home was mostly shot on blue screens based on the fact that of COVID and because they really couldn't do anything without restrictions and without very tight quarantining and stuff like that. But they did shoot a little bit of it outside of the blue screen environment. One scene that they shot in particular was the ending scene where Peter Parker goes to the coffee shop with Zendaya. I remember seeing those set photos of Zendaya at the coffee shop where Peter Parker almost reveals himself to her, and then he doesn't. And that was one of the last scenes in the movie, right? And that doesn't take place concurrently with the rest of the movie. Just because one particular shot or one particular scene takes place in December 2027, that could be the opening of the movie, and the rest of the movie could take place during Avengers Doomsday. So we don't know, because there have been previous reports, and things could have changed, but there were previous reports saying that Spider-Man Brand New Day took place concurrently with Doomsday. Maybe, again, things have changed, right? But just because this one scene that they're shooting right now takes place in December 2027 doesn't mean the whole movie does. So we have to take that into account. But if this entire movie mostly takes place during December 2027, this confirms that Spider-Man Brand New Day is officially now going to be before Doomsday, and that means everything is going chronologically, which means really all of this was much ado about nothing. Maybe one of the reasons they pushed Avengers Doomsday at all is because of this. Maybe they really made a hardline decision of we need Spider-Man Brand New Day just to be standalone. We got confirmation from Kevin Feige that this is going to be street level. So maybe he was like, we need this movie to just stand alone and set up whatever's coming on in Doomsday at the end of the movie. And they were like, okay, well, we need more time to film. Anyways, let's just push it to December 2026 and have that all sorted out. Maybe that was one of the reasons why. But I think this is just so much cleaner, guys. This is so much cleaner. Because they could have done an Ant-Man and the Wasp, right? When Doomsday was going to come out before Spider-Man Brand New Day. They could have done an Ant-Man and the Wasp where, we go back a couple steps in chronology. I just think it's so much cleaner to go, yep, Captain America happens, Thunderbolts happens, Fantastic Four is happening in an alternate universe, Deadpool and Wolverine happening in an alternate universe, and then Spider-Man's happening, and then we get Doomsday. It's just so much cleaner, guys. It's just so much cleaner. So I think this is all good news, and I'm excited. I mean, we're getting set photos, which I don't love to pay attention to every single set photo, but it's kind of inevitable at this stage, and so we'll have to see what happens there. Guys, what do you think of this news that according to set photos and set leaks, I guess, that Spider-Man Brand New Day is taking place at the same time, not at the same time, rather, before Avengers Doomsday? Let me know in the comments down below. Alrighty, guys, anybody up for some Teen Titans drama? Maybe just me? Anyways, let's talk about it. So, Teen Titans is, first of all, Teen Titans is a property that people have been talking about for quite a while now, because James Gunn was doing some interviews, and he and Peter Safran were doing some interviews, and apparently during those interviews, we covered those a while ago, where James Gunn gave a big update on a lot of DCU projects, and he was like, yeah, Ana Neguera, who wrote the Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow, or I guess Supergirl script now, no longer Woman of Tomorrow, Supergirl script, and he was like, yeah, Ana Neguera is writing a Teen Titans script, which was reported a while ago, but then James Gunn and Peter Safran officially confirmed that she at least had been working on a Teen Titans script. And then, recently, we just talked about the fact that Ana Neguera is being tapped to write the Wonder Woman movie, which, in terms of reporting timelines, when the articles came out that said she's been tapped to write the script, that just means that she had been writing the script, because when these things break, it means that the news that that people are breaking had been happening for quite a while, usually, and that they had just been, just people just found out recently. The example that I think is really interesting is John Campy likes to say, when Ben Affleck revealed that he had been cast as Batman, or when the trades revealed that, it turns out Ben Affleck revealed later on that he had been cast as Batman for quite a while, and it was just the fact that people found out later on. So, Ana Neguera recently, anyways, the point is that she had been, we had found out that she had been tapped to write the Wonder Woman film. But then recently, James Gunn, as he likes to do on Threads and whatever other platforms he's on, likes to talk about things and likes to debunk and confirm things, which I have said before on this YouTube channel. I have a love-hate relationship with this. Sometimes I'm like, James, just let it go. It's the tiniest thing. It is what it is. And just because you confirm something or you deny something doesn't really matter in the grand scheme of things. You can let people think that there is a Teen Titans movie, because eventually there will be. And unless the entire world is making up some fake story about Teen Titans heading into productions or whatnot, if it's just a very small minority of fans, I think it is what it is. On the other hand, I guess for things like this, there isn't much harm in debunking it, because James Gunn has gotten on Twitter and said, or on Threads, I think, and said, no, a Teen Titans script does not exist. Kind of. So basically, people were asking him the other day, what is going on with this Teen Titans script in the wake of the Ana Neguera news that she was going to be writing a Wonder Woman movie, and he just continued to respond to people. So there's a series of threads here that I'm just going to read out, and then we're going to talk about that. So one person says, James, have you read the script for Ana Neguera's Teen Titans? James Gunn responds, and these are his exact words. He says, it doesn't exist. She's been on Wonder Woman for a while. So that confirms, just interjecting here, that confirms, like we talked about, that she had been writing Wonder Woman for quite a bit, and I think that script is finished, I want to say. Maybe not confirmed. I don't want to put that out there if that's not true. But that she had been turning her focus to Wonder Woman for a while, and a finished script of Teen Titans does not exist. So then another user points to a Variety screenshot in which James Gunn and Peter Safran were doing an interview, and he says, quote, this is what he said at the time, it's out there, meaning the news that she was writing Teen Titans, and then he says, it was something that Ana was really impassioned about, and she turned over an amazing script for us. She's fiddling with that now, but it's definitely not a finished script. And James Gunn says, we said the script's not finished. I asked Ana to move to Wonder Woman to finish that first, and she did. Okay? So clearing up the timeline there. Then another person says, some people thought you meant that it never existed. You were clearly talking about a finished script. Sounds like Teen Titans is just on the back burner, which makes sense. James Gunn responds, yes, we just have never read a script. Then another person quotes, it gets so convoluted, with people trying to corner James Gunn. And this is where I say, James, sometimes it's fine to just let things go. Anyways, so then somebody screenshots something from that Variety article that says Teen Titans. And this is Variety saying. Variety says, or whatever the news source, I think it's Variety, says, in their own words, not James Gunn's words, Ana Neguera turned in a draft. And then quotes James Gunn saying, quote, Ana is working on a script. It's something she was really impassioned about. We just talked about this quote. And they were like, James, what do you think about this? And James Gunn was like, I was talking about Supergirl. So apparently, whoever wrote this article, because it does look like, because this article, if you remember, way back when. This was a few months ago. The article basically bucketed all these different upcoming DC projects and wrote a caption next to it saying that what the status of it is. And next to Teen Titans, they did write Anna Nogueira turned in a draft. Those were their words, right? And it is easy to misinterpret that and say, oh, James Gunn confirmed that Anna Nogueira turned in a draft, because these news sources are generally spot on. It turns out, I guess in this case, that really what he meant by that was that no, she turned in a draft for Supergirl. So what have we learned from all of this? What have we learned from all of this? We've learned that James Gunn really likes to set the record straight, which is fine. That's well and good. And number two, a finished draft for Teen Titans does not exist. That's really what we've learned from this. I think it's interesting that he said prioritize Wonder Woman, get that done, and she did. It looks like. And we'll get back to Teen Titans later. So Teen Titans is not dead. It's still, James Gunn is confirming that it is still on the back burner. It's still on the catalog of DC projects that he wants to make. And it looks like that'll be a film that she'll be working on after Wonder Woman, but probably we'll get the Wonder Woman movie much earlier, and then Teen Titans will be coming later. So it's an interesting song and dance that James Gunn likes to do with confirming and not confirming things. But I have a love-hate relationship with all of this. But at the end of the day, we have something to talk about here. Teen Titans doesn't have a finished script as of the recording of this video, it looks like. And then we'll probably be getting it sometime in the future because Wonder Woman is the priority, which makes sense, by the way. So, guys, what do you make of all this? Teen Titans, we thought it was going to be heading into development much sooner, and it looks like it is not. It does not have a finished script. Let me know in the comments what you think about this down below. Alrighty, guys, is it time to turn the page on Fantastic Four First Steps? Well, maybe not just yet, but still, there are people who are already looking forward to what the MCU has in store, even though we have over a year's wait, I believe, or maybe just a little bit under a year's wait until the next MCU movie, which is Spider-Man Brand New Day, and then another 6 months until Avengers Doomsday. Regardless, Fantastic Four, I think, despite however much money it actually makes at the box office, which, I mean, as long as it's not a colossal failure, which at this point I just don't see it being, I think that with the good word of mouth, we talked about the first weekend's box office results and whatnot, I think that this film will easily cross $500 million. After that, we'll see. But I think that regardless, this film is a success in Marvel's eyes just based on the critical reaction and whatnot. And so I think Fantastic Four is a step in the right direction. But what comes next, right? Because Avengers Doomsday is filming. Spider-Man Brand New Day is now filming. What comes next? What happens next in the MCU? Well, we have a Variety article here. Variety being one of the more reputable sources in Hollywood. And their article is titled Marvel's Next Moves, Black Panther 3 and a young X-Men cast to, quote, keep the cost down. Blade and Deadpool 4 are lower priority. So the title really says it all. But let's dig into this article a little bit and see what we can glean here about the future of the MCU. So first of all, the first thing that this article talks about here is the fact that the X-Men reboot is coming out. But really, one of the things that's motivating the MCU to keep their costs down, and we'll talk about what that impact looks like in terms of casting, is China. Because China obviously has been one of the biggest contributors to the worldwide box office gross. The article points out that Avengers Endgame alone made $614 million from China. Just China, $614 million. More than Captain America Brave New World, more than Thunderbolts, more than probably, maybe just a little bit less than Fantastic Four will ever make in its entire run. That is a huge market, but things are changing. Post-COVID and now entering a new age here, that's changing. China is no longer a big market in the international movie space. And so Marvel is being cognizant now. We may never see numbers like Avengers Endgame ever again, not because films won't be as good as Avengers Endgame, right? I'm hoping Avengers Doomsday and Avengers Secret Wars are even better than Avengers Endgame, but and not because of the fact that there isn't excitement around the MCU anymore, but because of China. I think that that's a really big factor. So in talking about an ensemble film like X-Men, right, one of the things that they're talking about, because that's a film that requires a lot of cast members, is that they're going to cast not necessarily unknowns, right, but the article talks about the fact that they're going to put a wide net open. They're going to cast young. And one of the reasons an analyst says, although, again, it's not speculation per se, it says they're a source, but it's not coming from Marvel directly, is that they're trying to keep the cost down as well by doing this, by casting younger X-Men characters. And to be honest with you, maybe this is unpopular. I think that's a good thing. Not necessarily that they should be cutting costs at all expense and whatnot, but I think that, there's a difference between penny pinching, right, and not going after really good talent, which I think it's clear that they're not doing that, right? They have Robert Downey Jr. playing Doctor Doom. They have Pedro Pascal, Vanessa Kirby, Joseph Quinn, Eben Moss-Bachrach. Those are premier actors in the business today. It's not like they're just going out and grabbing random people because they're trying to save costs. I think, though, what we often forget is that constraint sometimes leads to the best things. And I think sometimes just casting a huge net and picking the best actors, regardless of if they've been in projects before, especially with younger cast members, leads to great things. Stranger Things is a perfect example. Nobody had ever heard of Noah Schnapp. No one had ever heard of Finn Wolfhard. I mean, not nobody, right? That's hyperbole, but people, these were up-and-coming young actors. Millie Bobby Brown, right? Caleb McLaughlin, Gaten Matarazzo. Nobody had heard of these actors before. They grew into becoming really good actors in their own right, but Stranger Things was where they got their start. If the X-Men is a similar thing, then I think that's a great thing. I think that's a really exciting thing. So I personally I'm pretty interested to see what kinds of actors and actresses they can get for the X-Men reboot. Moving on here, they talk about the fact that the Fantastic Four is doing pretty well at the box office, although again, China being a mitigating factor, so it may not make $1 billion, but still, it's considered a win for Marvel. They talked about Deadpool and Wolverine previously being a hit, but then Thunderbolts and Captain America not being so much as not making a ton of money here. And then they start talking about the future. So this is where the article gets a little bit more interesting. It says, quote, "There won't be much to analyze for the next year. The next Marvel movie to hit theaters is Spider-Man Brand New Day on July 31st, followed by Doomsday in December and Avengers Secret Wars in December 2027. Amid an industry-wide pullback on superheroes, the Marvel Brain Trust is feeling no sense of urgency on the long-gestating Blade reboot or even a new Deadpool outing, sources say." That's interesting. We'll get back to that. However, this is the next part of the article. Ideas are percolating on a Ryan Coogler helmed Black Panther 3, creating excitement internally. And I think that's about it from this article. So really that paragraph, honing in on that paragraph there, right? There is not a lot of urgency rather to make a Deadpool 4 or a Blade. We have heard other varying reports saying that Blade is coming and Blade, it might be happening soon. Maybe there's no urgency, but maybe they are starting to get the tires kicking on Blade again. Maybe. We've heard, though, Black Panther 3 has some momentum with Ryan Coogler, so I don't think anything here inherently is a surprise. Even Deadpool 4 not really happening because, again, I think Ryan Reynolds might want to step back. You can always, get Ryan Reynolds to make a cameo in Deadpool and Doomsday and Secret Wars, which I think is very likely to happen. I think it's interesting there is no mention of a Shang-Chi 2, which I have been beating the drum for it's almost 6 years, almost 5 years now at this point since 2021 when it came out, because I cannot believe there is no Shang-Chi 2 to be seen. That being said, I'm glad that we're leaning towards a Black Panther 3. Black Panther, a very obviously successful and I think wonderful franchise thus far. So I'm interested to see what happens there. But I think that the takeaways here are Marvel is really focusing up, reorienting, and I think that some of these constraints from Hollywood itself, not necessarily from Marvel, are actually going to be good things. I really do think that, I'm not just saying this to I think that constraints are going to play a big part in Marvel probably finding the next big actors and actresses for their X-Men cast. I'm very excited about that, to be honest with you. I don't think we should just, hire the next or the current biggest young actors today. I think we should really go and find the best talent. And maybe, right? All the fan casts that are going on, maybe those are the best actors and actresses for these roles, but who knows? I think that Marvel, one thing to close out the segment really quickly, one thing that I've always said is that you can question Marvel's ability to put out quality in terms of putting out high quality, high quantity with the Disney Plus shows, and you can question a lot of the movies and TV shows they put out in the past few years. One thing I think you just cannot question Marvel about, I say cannot facetiously, but for me personally, is the casting. She-Hulk. I know a lot of people don't like She-Hulk. Tatiana Maslany was great, I think. Great casting. Other projects like Secret Invasion. I don't think Secret Invasion was poorly cast. Ben Mendelsohn, Kingsley Ben-Adir, Samuel L. Jackson. I think that they were all great, right? And so I think that even in the Marvels, Tiana Paris, Iman Vellani is amazing. And I think the casting is not something that they've really missed on. So I'm very excited to see who they are able to find for the younger X-Men cast. Guys, what do you think about this article here from Variety talking about the future of the MCU, where they're going? X-Men, Blade, Black Panther 3. Let me know in the comments down below. Alrighty, guys, Peacemaker Season 2 is only a couple weeks away, which is exciting. I think that, the DCU, I like Superman. I thought it was really solid, and I'm intrigued to see where the new DCU goes. I will say, I've said this before, the DCU in 2025 is really the James Gunn cinematic universe for all intents and purposes. Creature Commandos, which was at the end of 2025 into 2020, or at the end of 2024 into the beginning of 2025, that was written by James Gunn. And then Superman obviously was James Gunn's baby, and then Peacemaker season 2 is even more so from his mind. So for all intents and purposes, it's really the James Gunn cinematic universe at this point, which for me personally has its ups and downs, right? I think for me, I've said this before, James Gunn has a ceiling when it comes to his movies and shows. I've said this, it's not just DC, it's not just, a bias against DC. I've said this about his Guardians of the Galaxy films as well. I really enjoy them. I really enjoy Peacemaker. I really enjoy the Suicide Squad. They all kind of have a ceiling for me, though, in terms of enjoyment. There's something there where his sensibilities as a director just quite can't get me over the top of, oh, wow, this is a generational kind of project for me. And I know a lot of people love the first Guardians, a lot of people love the third Guardians, a lot of people love Superman. So it's just me personally. But anyways, we have a new trailer for Peacemaker Season 2. And first of all, just want to address this out of the way because we did a segment a week ago where we talked about this. So there's a line in this trailer, right? And it's going to be a big plot point, apparently. And we'll talk about this towards the end of this trailer thoughts segment. But there's a line in the trailer where Peacemaker alludes to the fact that they're in a dimension that's better than theirs. And James Gunn clarified at Comic-Con what that actually meant because we talked about it without any context, right? We hadn't actually seen what was in the trailers itself. We were just talking about that line. And I speculated, is he talking about the DCEU? Is that what's going on here? So turns out that's likely not what's going on here, although it does open a whole can of worms because what he's actually talking about is the story of what looks like the entire season of Peacemaker Season 2 is that in that pocket universe or quantum folding tunnel or whatever it is that was in the first season where he got his costumes and whatnot, apparently creates a rift into another dimension where people love him. And that looks like that's the thematic element of this season is the fact that people love Peacemaker in another dimension and he really wants to turn a new leaf and become a hero. But, he obviously has very violent tendencies and his past is literally catching up to him in the fact that Rick Flag Sr. looks like he is the villain of Peacemaker Season 2. So that's all interesting and whatnot. And before we dive into dimensions and multiverse and things like that, I want to talk about some of the things in the trailer that I liked and then some other things in the trailer that concern me a little bit. I mean, it's Peacemaker. It's crazy, right? I thought the joke at the beginning was funny, very in line with Peacemaker, where Vigilante is throwing Economos a drink and he just keeps dropping it. Like that stuff it's classic Peacemaker, it's classic James Gunn, and it's funny. I really enjoy that kind of stuff. The action looks crazy as usual, and it looks like they have upped their game, right? It looks like they really have stepped it up, in terms of compared to the first season, which was not that it was a throwaway kind of show for HBO because James Gunn really elevated what was there, but I don't think that HBO fully understood why they were doing a Peacemaker show, but they, trusted James Gunn and DC was kind of on a tailspin, so they just let him do what he was going to do, and it turned out really well for everyone involved, I think. So that's all well and good. And I think that, again, it's the spirit of Peacemaker. I think that there will not be a high variance in terms of whether you liked, if you liked Peacemaker Season 1, you're probably going to like this season. And if you didn't like Peacemaker Season 1, probably not going to like this season. I just don't imagine that there's going to be a very high variance when it comes to that. So there is that. Again, and I liked Peacemaker Season 1, so I am looking forward to Peacemaker Season 2. That being said, this trailer, both as a trailer and what it shows me about what Peacemaker Season 2 is about, has me concerned. So, number one, as a trailer itself, I just think it's a kind of sloppy trailer. It's one of those trailers that wants to show you so many different things from so many different scenes, and it wants to show you a little bit of everything. And I personally am not a big fan of those kinds of trailers. I think the trailer should have its own little mini narrative story that's going on from beginning to end, instead of just trying to show you every single thing about every single plot point, right? Like, I for an example of this in the trailer is the little plot point that they keep trying to make of a Harcourt being in love with Peacemaker and Peacemaker being in love with Harcourt, the will they, won't they? And it's like, yeah, you could have teased that in one or two shots in the trailer, but it became a whole different thing they cut away to in the trailer. And there's the scene where Adebayo is talking to Harcourt and she's like, oh, is that can ever happen? And Harcourt's like, nope, not gonna happen. Like, I get that it's going to be a big sticking point, I guess, in this parallel dimension. But still, it's something where it's like, you didn't have to make that as explicit in the trailer, but they kept jumping to all these different little things within the show. So as a trailer, I thought the trailer itself was a little sloppy. I liked the first teaser, where it was just Justice Gang in the beginning with a little scene, and then you kind of get a taste of what's going on there. And at the very end, you see that other Peacemaker, which we kind of speculate is that a dream and what's going on there. Here's the other thing, though. Multiverse. I I'm a little torn on this because I think James Gunn probably had a good reason for doing what he's doing. At the same time, though, have we learned nothing? I think that with everything going on in the MCU, and look, I'm somebody who says Phase 4 is pretty good, and there are some good things about Phase 5, even though I think it's the weakest phase. The multiverse saga, though, needs to end, right? We need to move on from the multiverse saga. And even The Flash, and even when the DCEU was doing multiverse, it was like, come on, guys. Like, we're in such a multiverse phase, and I think we all got over it much quicker than the entertainment industry thought we were going to. And so, I get that James Gunn probably had a very good reason for doing this in Peacemaker, and I know it's not strictly multi-universe, and don't get on me in the comments about that. I know. It's an alternate dimension and whatever. It's the same thing. It's the same plot device, effectively. And I don't know if that's where we wanted to go in Peacemaker Season 2, also in the third project in the DCU. Are we really opening it up to alternate universes? I know in Superman, spoiler alert, minor spoiler alert, we saw pocket universes. But even still, this is opening up a whole can of worms, because we talked about in the last segment where we heard this line of different dimensions. Is that a reference to the DCEU? How are they going to transition over Peacemaker from the DCEU into the DCU? Is that going to be confusing? And I don't know. Is that going to make people think who are big Snyder fans that, oh, there's a possibility that the DCU can exist? And that is that going to fuel the fire of, even though James Gunn has continued to reiterate, and he did so again recently, that Robert Pattinson is not the DCU's Batman. He keeps saying this, guys. He keeps saying this. Is that going to continue to fuel the fire that Robert Pattinson's Batman is going to enter the DCU? I don't know. And frankly, I think we're all kind of over the multiverse, I think that this concept has been played out multiple times. I'm sure that it'll be used effectively by James Gunn. He usually has a very good reason for doing these story devices. It's not just going to be haphazard, so I get that, and I have faith in that, but I'm still just a little trepidatious, I don't know. Is this going to be is it going to be something where it's like, oh yeah, we wanted to do multiverse, and when we filmed it was exciting and whatnot, but then kind of seeing where the DCU landed, it just doesn't look like it's as exciting anymore. I don't know. I'm hoping for the best. I think that of all the projects, Peacemaker is probably the one where James Gunn's sensibility works the best for me personally. Maybe aside from the Guardians films. So I know that he probably has a very good handle on what he's doing here. I just look at this trailer. I look at it as a trailer and also as a story or as glimpses into what the season is going to be. And I can't help but be a little bit concerned. But guys, maybe all of this is for nothing. We're going to find out in, I think, just a couple weeks here what is going on. So stay tuned for that. We're going to be doing full spoiler discussions on the Access Blockbusters pod and on the Access Blockbusters YouTube channel. So stay tuned for that, guys. What do you think about Peacemaker Season 2's trailer? Are you excited about it, or are you a little bit nervous like me? Let me know in the comments down below. And everybody, that will do it for episode number 89 of the Access Blockbusters pod. Thank you so much for joining us. As always, if you haven't subscribed already to the Access Blockbusters YouTube channel, make sure to do so. Give this video a like. Road to 2,000 subscribers. We are almost there, guys. Thank you so much for joining us. As always, audio-only platforms as well. Apple Podcasts, Overcast, and Spotify. Make sure to check out the full podcast episodes Saturday mornings, U.S. time. They are out there first. Thank you so much for listening. It is such a joy and a privilege to be here, as always, with you guys, and I will see you all in the next one.